next, for this upcoming weekend of college football, I want to note today's significance, the 20th anniversary of the September 11, 2001 attacks, a day where Americans came together to overcome great adversity. Now, we come together again to honor those we lost that day.
Is this year the year? All the experts, all the noise, all the potential points to it. The revitalization of a defense, joined by the overwhelming talent on offense, has shaped this team into a contender. Is it finally time? 21 years since the last championship came back to Norman. And year after year since then, the Sooners have always been just upon the cusp of glory. But maybe this year is different. Maybe this year, the gun-slinging Heisman hopeful can lead them there. Maybe this year, the D-line can deliver the hits their team needs. Maybe this year, the best offensive mind in the country can finish the job. But it's time to stop asking what if. It's time to stop wondering and start putting in the work, packing the house, showing the passion, scoring at will and grinding out wins, because it's football time in Oklahoma. It's OU and the Western Carolina Catamounts. And this is Game Day U.
Hello and welcome to Game Day U. I'm Will Blessing, joined by Shannon Earhart and Ben Thomas. The Sooners kick off against the Western Carolina Catamounts tonight at 6 p.m. But before that, let's look at the game from last week. Shannon, what are your takeaways from the Tulane game?
Well, what OU did was they didn't actually sustain production over all 60 minutes. The first quarter, they looked absolutely atrocious. I'm not going to lie. They had so many bad plays and bad takeaways. It just didn't look good, and that's when Tulane capitalized. The second quarter, they looked great. They came out and played their best football I've seen in a very long time. But then the third quarter rolled around, and they just looked lost again. That's when the defense gave up plays across the middle, and that's when the offense did not produce. That's when Rattler was shut down, and they could not make plays. Tulane outscored OU 21-3 in the second half. That's embarrassing. It's Tulane here. That's what we're talking about. It kind of seemed like OU kind of took it as a trap game. They kind of fell short, weren't really expecting Tulane to come out that hard, and did not make big plays. What OU needs to do is sustain production over 60 minutes and put the game away and show what they're actually capable of. That second quarter was their best football, and that's what they need to do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think talking about mindset with this team, with that game against Tulane, I think the Sooners came in with the wrong mindset. I think they came in way too cocky to play the green wave. The Sooners had a massive amount of hype heading into this game. They were ranked number 2 nationally. They were favored to be the national champion. But, they didn't really play up to the Oklahoma standard. They did not play like a champion against the green wave. Rattler underthrew passes. The defense missed basic tackles, basic coverage. It was just a mess. I don't think they were prepared to face this team. I think they had too big of a head, and it just was detrimental to their entire level of play against the green wave. It was embarrassing that they got outscored 21-3 in the second half. That's something that shouldn't be happening for a team with this lineup, with this ranking. It was just messy. They were too cocky. They got to get their heads right if they want to contend for what they're trying to contend for.
No, I have to agree with you guys. I think that is 2 excellent points, and that definitely happened in this game. For me, it comes down to what you were saying. 3 points in the second half. Lincoln Riley was too conservative. He wasn't aggressive, and we've seen this happen all the time in this Lincoln Riley era. They get up to a big lead, they jump out early, and what happens? He gets conservative. That 3rd and something, he's running the ball. And he's putting faith in his defense, even though his defense maybe isn't getting constant stops. Like, I get it, you want to trust your defense. You might not play as aggressive on the offensive side, having that big of a lead, but still, you should be putting up points regardless, whether that's just field goals or, obviously we want the touchdowns. But field goals are better. I'll take them, honestly. Nick Saban doesn't really play conservative. Dabo Swinney doesn't play conservative. And what happens? They win national championships. I think for Lincoln Riley to take that next step and take this team to a national championship, he's got to play aggressive all the time.
He does need to utilize his depth as well. I think he kind of tried to do that, but he kind of played the wrong players, in my opinion.
Yeah, putting in Caleb Williams for that first touchdown, it was a very interesting play call, and I think something like that with the interchangeability could be used later on.
Yeah,
but he's got to use it. He's got to utilize
I think it
what
was shell-shocking kind of for Spencer Rattler. I think he was, after he saw that, he kind of turned it on, and that's why the second quarter he came out electric, and then he dropped the ball again in the third.
And I was surprised there were a bunch of guys that we thought were starters who weren't playing in that game. And I think I go back to that, like you point, that depth. Like, they need to utilize, they need to play their guys. And I think that's what we're going to see today, right? We're gonna have a full roster ready to go, ready to take off after that poor last game.
Yes, indeed. Now we're talking about the poor last game. OU fans have already been, a little scared about what this performance can mean for the rest of the year, rest of the season. Shannon, how panicked should OU fans actually be?
I'm going to put it out of are you talking on a 10 scale?
I'm talking on a 10 scale.
All right, I'm going to say 2 out of 10. OU should not be worried at all. It's literally the beginning of the season, and it's first week jitters. From the second quarter, we saw what OU is actually capable of. They have every September game at home, and if they come out with the right mentality, they will produce, and I'm confident in that. Grinch and Riley actually said they didn't do a good enough job mentally preparing for the Sooners. And I think that OU will look like a top 2 team after amping up their practice regimen. Maybe it's something going on that they're not having the defenders really contend too hard against the offense to make sure that they're not injured. But I think that they need to really up that, and it's going to make a huge difference in the game. Give them a break, guys. Give them a break. It's the first game. It's the first game. They're rusty, and they haven't played against a different-looking defense in 8 months. So give them a second chance. It's only a benchmark for OU. They're going to watch this tape and grow. And, yeah, they had a lot of hype all over them on the entire offseason. And, I think this game really put them in the place and kind of set the tone for what the rest of the season is going to bring.
So you're saying a 2 out of 10. I'm going the opposite spectrum. I'm saying 7 out of 10.
Wow, you're going really
Sooner
high.
fans
Will,
should
that
be
is
concerned.
high.
Okay.
It should
All
be.
right.
This was too messy of a game. It was just embarrassing. It was honestly embarrassing for the Sooners. It exposed some flaws in the offense. Rattler needs to get control of this offense. Shannon mentioned how he seemed kind of shell-shocked going into the second half. He's got to get out of his head. He's a Heisman contender. He's got to play like one. There were just sloppy plays, missed coverages, missed tackles. The speed D wasn't too speedy out there. They couldn't catch up to the Tulane running back or the Tulane quarterback. Missed catches, underthrow passes. They had the same amount of red zone attempts and successes as Tulane did, 5 for 6. Most of those were field goals. Shouldn't be settling for that. However, all hope is not lost. There is a ray of hope. Rattler did have a solid completion percentage. The defense was able to make plays when needed. They made those third down stops, especially after the onside recovery. They were able to stop that and secure the win. Things will tune up in the end. They'll be fine. But right now, it's a little bit of a high alert.
7 to 10? 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
That's
7
full.
out of 10.
7 out of
That's a
10.
big
Will
pick.
Blessing. Check yourself.
I'm gonna bring it back
embarrassing.
down to earth a little bit
Okay,
here. I'm gonna go
okay,
right
bring me
between you
down.
guys. I'm gonna go to about a 4. All right. It's just like our ranking now because we fell. But I think that game definitely could have just been a fluke for the Sooners. The high expectation, the cockiness, mentally not prepared. But they need to figure some things out here because if I'm a Sooner fan, I would be just a little bit worried. There are some questions that I think still need to be answered. Can Rattler be the guy? We saw Caleb Williams come in, score a touchdown, and Rattler is inconsistent again starting this year. Can he be that guy? Is this defense ready to go? Are there some flaws there? There's a lot of things they need to work on. If I'm the Sooners, this needs to be a blowout game today because there are a lot of people questioning a lot of things. around this team, and to do a blowout win tonight would just be icing on the cake. Everybody would settle down, and everything would go back to normal and be totally fine.
But Ben, do you think it's going to be a blowout game?
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Absolutely
I think the
has to
Sooners
be.
will turn around.
You don't think they're going to get a little bit nervous again?
No.
This is Western Carolina. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Now, we're moving on. I talked a little bit about the defense. They made some mistakes. What was the biggest flaw that we saw in Speed D against Tulane?
Are you asking me? Because
I
I'm
am.
going to have to say rush defense.
asking
I did
you.
not think that the rush defense was on par. I think they can do a lot better than what they did against Tulane. Yes, they had 3 turnovers in the second quarter, but where was that in the other 3 quarters of the game? They just lacked it. Tulane actually out-tackled OU as a team. Give you some stats here, 71-68. This is Tulane we're talking about. We're in a Power 5 conference. What was happening to OU? I don't understand why they could not pick up the pace here. Yes, they had 2 sacks against Michael Pratt, but also they had 2 sacks against Michael Pratt. It should have been a ton more, at least 4 or 5. Only 2, it was not very good. Also, I want to call out Bijan Winfrey. Where were you, man? Where were you? I didn't see any production from you. You're supposed to be a standout player, come out and really produce, and you just did not at all. They finally decided they want to play last minute. Congratulations, Nick Bonito. And Bijan Winfrey, congrats. You were there, I saw you, but you were not there for the rest of the game. The rush defense was not there, and it was kind of embarrassing, quite frankly.
Jenna, we're on kind of similar wavelength right now. I'm going with the entire defense was just fundamentally flawed. They missed out on basic defensive fundamentals that they have to hit if they want to be who they want to be. You know, you mentioned they only had 2 sacks on Pratt. That's because they couldn't catch up to him. They continually got beat by the QB and the running back on multiple occasions, failed to stop the score. There were a couple of times where the running back just went through a wide open hole. Something like that shouldn't be happening against a team like Tulane. Either Tulane is just really good, or this was just sloppy play. I'm going to go with the second one. They were able to get 4 sacks in, but with the pressure and the hype that this defensive line has gotten, they need to be getting more. They need to be pressuring that quarterback more. There were so many times where an offensive lineman for Tulane would just push down the D-line. It's embarrassing. They showed some promise in the second quarter, but they couldn't keep it up. There were some impressive plays. There were some good forced fumbles, but there just was not anything major. Shannon mentioned Bijan Winfrey didn't show out. He had 1 tackle for loss of yards.
I really think that what we can agree on here, Will, is that OU was embarrassing. That's kind of the underlying
That was the most points
theme.
given up to a group of 5 team in Lincoln Riley under the Lincoln Riley so far.
Embarrassing.
It is
Ben,
an
what do you
embarrassing
think?
performance.
Tell
What
us.
do you think?
Honestly, I still have high hopes for this team and this defense, but
course.
simple mistakes and blown coverages were brutal for this team against Tulane. Simple out routes. Those are things that you could throw a guy on the flat and cover those, but they were just getting beaten down the field. Tulane was able to move up and down this field running simple plays. And on top of that, play action passes. The Sooners were getting faked out every single time. Quarterback would fake that handoff, drop back, and the Sooners would bite every single time. It's simple mistakes that I know that Grinch and them will go into that room, watch back, and be like, all right, guys, you know that you need to change these things. You know you need to play a certain way and play your game. He mentioned that during the game when they were starting out really sloppy. They're like, play your game. He was play your game, play how you guys know, don't read, react. So, I mean, I think they really need to go in there, look over the tape, be like, all right, guys, it was the first game. It's Tulane. We'll get this back. It's Western Carolina, a team they know they can dominate. I think just the simple mistakes, those blown coverages, they get those right, they will be back to that speed D. They'll be back to that
Yes.
The
full
potential's
form.
there.
The
Great.
speedy D.
It'll be there.
speedy
It'll
D.
be there.
The speedy D.
added
speedy
Per
D.
Will Blessing.
Grinch has potential. He knows what he's doing. They've just got to execute.
I
But
mean,
against
Grinch
a team like
even-
Texas and Iowa State, that's not going to fly.
No,
They will get
not at
blown
all.
out
no,
against
absolutely
those
not.
teams. So
I mean,
they really
Iowa
need to
State,
change
Iowa
it.
State last weekend.
Well,
though.
I don't know
Woo!
about that. Yeah, I don't know about that.
We'll
Maybe
get
not
into
last
that a
weekend.
little bit
Yeah.
later. But talking about potential, Spencer Rattler leading this offense, messy showing. Can he right the ship? Can he lead this offense in the right direction?
You know, the term right the ship I kind of love because, you know, you can picture it, you know. But I do have to say Rattler will absolutely right the ship 100%. The ship has not crashed. Rattler is rusty. The entire team is rusty, and I talked about that earlier, and this performance should not be the final say on Rattler's season. Tulane, they made great plays on the ball, and Spencer Rattler even said that himself, that he kind of had a tough time dealing with that defense, or dealing with that defense. We know that he holds himself to a high standard. He's not going to let this define him. Last year, yeah, he had a rough start. We can remember last year when he played against Iowa State and Kansas State. Kind of shaky, kind of rocked the boat a little bit. But then he came out with 8 straight wins. He knows what he needs to do. He needs to cut out the bad plays and the poor decisions and trust his O-line. That's what he needs to do. Trust his O-line. That's what I'm going to harp on.
That is very true. Beatonbaugh's made it.
Yes, I know. I agree. But on top of that, he has Caleb Williams on his heels, ready to come in. That competition is really just going to push him to work even harder and try even harder and fight for that starting spot, because it will get taken away from him if he doesn't play up to his standard that everybody believed him to play.
The potential's definitely there. And while I have ragged on the offensive play, I think Rattler can also right the ship. But he's just under so much pressure. You got to look at the past Sooner quarterbacks. Baker, Kyler, Jalen, just legendary QB play, 2 Heismans, a Heisman runner-up. This is the level of pressure that Spencer Rattler is under. And Spencer Rattler is 20. You know, he's not
He's younger
an
than
adult.
us.
He's younger than us. You know, he's still rated super high. He's currently rated 2nd most likely to get the Heisman. It's just a big amount of pressure on Rattler. Oklahoma has a big legacy to live up to with QBs. They have been named QBU in the past. He's got to live up to it, but it's a lot of pressure, and I can kind of understand just cracking under it. But you got to get control. You got to keep going.
I'm going to have to disagree with you guys. We know I'm Spencer Rattler's biggest critic, and I'm going to be his critic once again. I understand. Lots of pressure on him. Projected 1st overall pick in the draft, Heisman contender, quarterback at OU. But honestly, to me, he knew about that rough start last season. Why is he doing it again?
He needs to replicate 2020 season.
Right.
He turned the ship around.
I know, but he shouldn't be doing that again. There's no excuse for that. You never saw Kyler, you never saw Baker, you never saw Jalen do that.
He's not them. He's not them.
No, I think he's not as good as them. Honestly, I truly think so. I think that those guys were better, and he's shown it. He's too much in his head. I think he has this cockiness about him, and I like that he carries himself to a higher standard, but I think then his play on field is getting affected by that. He's trying to throw into double coverage, triple coverage, trying to force it into these windows that he cannot do. He's not Patrick Mahomes. You will not fit it into the tiniest of windows. And I think that's that mental game, that maturity level of, all right, maybe instead of trying to fit into this window, take that check down pass. And I don't think he's doing that. I think that's a lot of sloppy play and inconsistency.
It's the first game.
But he
did this last season. He did this last season.
He did, but he shouldn't be doing it again.
He shouldn't be doing it again. That's my point.
Well, he needs to get the rust off. He needs to get the rust off. Give him a second.
The rust from a good Florida game where he played well.
I want to see if
he's on a roll.
Rattler, Florida, if he came out this year after that Florida game,
he can't.
We wouldn't be talking about this.
He's been playing against the same exact defense all offseason.
He has, but we'll get to see him against different defenses the rest of the season, but we've got to wrap it up. Coming up, should the Cyclones be concerned for their season? We'll get into that when Game Day U returns.
Was on an airplane that's been hijacked, and things will go well, and it's not looking good. I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So happy to time. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you, and I'll see you later. Bye, Dave.
Distinctly remember that time and that morning, and just was, it really got to me all day long. It did.
I was in the kitchen right there. I'm in my parents' house right now, in Oklahoma, and my brother and I, we were getting ready to go to school. We were eating breakfast at our kitchen table in the other room.
They let school out, and our mom coming and picking me up, and getting my other siblings out of school. Surreal moment. I will never forget that day for the rest of my life. Surreal moment. It's very much the reason why I joined when I was 18. So
the first time I was deployed was in 2003 and 2004. About halfway through the third quarter, or the end of the third quarter, we got to watch it, and OU was not playing that good, and they got beat. And so it was upsetting, but at the same time, it was awesome to be able to get that to be able to watch the football game when you're in Afghanistan.
The one that sticks out the most is probably the Boise State and Oklahoma game. And a corporal of mine was from Boise, Idaho. So I made a bet with him. It was like a $5 bet or something like that. And so I had to eat crow the next day after we lost to Boise State.
Back when I was a second lieutenant, pretty much brand new in the Army.
Welcome back to Game Day U. Getting into it, we've talked a lot about the Sooners' play against Tulane, but how do they stack up against the rest of the Big 12? Is this the year that the Sooners are dethroned as Big 12 champions?
Absolutely not. I do not think this is the year that they're going to be dethroned. OU has that SEC mindset, and they have that in the back of their minds for that 2025 season. They're not going to let up now off the gas. They have no choice. They're on their way to the SEC, and they're determined to put those doubters to sleep. Don't put it behind them. They're going to be able to do it. They need to be at that SEC level. Otherwise, they're going to be eaten alive by the SEC, so they need to prove that they can stay in that conference. OU is not only competing against the Big 12, but honestly, to me, they're competing against themselves and on their journey to that SEC mentally as well. The competition also, it just makes teams stronger and more prepared for the future, and that's what OU is going to see. The OU defense has been absolutely elite. They've been preparing themselves to get even better, improving each time that they step out onto the field. And I think this game we're really going to see them be able to do that. And offensively, Rattler's going to be able to right the ship, like I said earlier, and bring this team to that standard of that SEC level. So I do not think that they're going to be dethroned. I think they have no choice, that they need to stay at the top of the food chain here in the Big 12.
You know, I agree. They're not getting dethroned. You make an interesting point about the SEC mindset. That is something they need to hold on to. But I'm saying there's no real competition in the Big 12. Part of the reason why they're leaving for the SEC. There's nothing in the Big 12. Who's the big competitor? Iowa State. I mean, they've got solid plays. They work well, but nobody has the lineup like Oklahoma has the lineup. Oklahoma just needs to use the lineup they have. This discourse happens every year. People saying, oh, yeah, somebody could take over the Big 12. Never happens. Hasn't happened. 6 years straight. Has not happened. The Sooners, the Big 12 is Oklahoma's until they leave. Nobody's going to take it over. There's a 500-point spread between Oklahoma and Iowa State for the championship. It's theirs to lose.
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. I think the Big 12 championship will come right back here to Norman. But I was impressed by a certain Big 12 team that will be joining OU in the SEC, and I think can actually be a contender against them this year.
Yeah.
And that is Texas.
That
first game was very impressive under Steve Sarkisian, and I was really impressed by that team. Hudson Card looked like the guy.
He did.
He looked like the right pick, and he balled out over 200 yards with 2 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown as well. And Bijan Robinson is so good. Bijan, I have to. We'll talk about him a little later.
We'll get into
so
Bijan
I won't go too
later.
much into it, but this man will be a star in this league. I think. I mean, everything went right for Texas against a ranked matchup in the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, and I really thought after that game that, you know what, Texas. I'm not saying they're back, but they will compete with the Sooners this year. I don't think it's Iowa State. I don't think it's Iowa State this year. I think it is going to be Texas again.
I think it's going to be head-to-head Texas and OU.
I think OU Texas is going to be a great game, and I think the Big 12 championship will also be another OU Texas game because I think Texas is looking at it, and Steve Sarkisian has these boys going, and they look like a brand new team. That looked like a brand new offense that I saw last Saturday.
You know,
something we have not seen in a while. So I mean,
you know, something Sarkisian's talking about, the all gas no brakes mentality. Yeah. See how that plays into it. Seems like it's working right now.
It was very impressive. I was very impressed.
I'm about to talk about that. I'm too excited. I'm like jumping
We'll
here.
get into that, but we got more Big 12 to talk about. Which Big 12 team surprised you?
Well, I just said it. It's Texas. Ben harped on it a little bit, but I need to really go into detail here. They showed up and showed out. He talked about Steve Sarkisian here. He came in never being a head coach in his entire life and really brought this team to where they needed to be. They never know what to expect from Texas, honestly, in my opinion, and they really beat a ranked Louisiana Lafayette team. It was pretty impressive, and I think the really big difference there was converting on the first down. 10 out of 15 times they converted on the first down. That's better than what OU did against Tulane, and Tulane wasn't even ranked, and we were ranked number 2. Texas really did what they needed to do. They had 7 straight possessions with either scoring or the opportunity to score, which was super impressive and what we haven't really seen in the past years, at least last year in 2019. So I think that's great that they're coming out hot and they're really starting to do that. Also, you talked about Hudson Card and then Thompson. They played phenomenally. There was nothing that I would have changed. It was up in the air about 4 days before they were actually going to play, what they were going to do, who Steve Sarkisian was going to play. And he ended up playing starting Card, and then he played Thompson later. And both of them put up big numbers for that Texas team. So honestly, I do have to say, I think this all kind of revolves around Sarkisian and that the new hire, he's working out. He's working out. Everybody gave him stuff about it, but
it is week
he
one.
really.
It is week one.
But he played well. It was very impressive.
I'm still very
Oh, he did.
impressed.
He did.
It's a highlighter for this year.
You know,
definitely.
myself talking to Sarkisian and the players in the preseason, they're all very excited about this new offense, and it's very interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm going to have to go with the Big 12 team in the state to the north, Kansas State. They had a surprising showing against Stanford, winning 24-7, and that was primarily because of Skylar Thompson. He's given OU troubles in the past. It looks like he could give OU troubles again if they keep playing the way they do. Outplaying the Cardinals, they had 5 less minutes of possession time than the Cardinals did, and they did so much with that, even though they had less time. Deuce Vaughn played well, put the team on his back, had some massive plays going for him. Kansas State was favored by 3 points. They won by more than 3 points. They completely
Kansas
outplayed
State
the
always
Cardinals.
scares everybody.
They do.
I'm not going to lie.
They're
to
not
you.
going to win the
mean,
Big 12.
I
They
thought
shocked
Skylar
us
Thompson
last year.
had left us. I thought he left Kansas State by now. I mean,
He's
it feels
never
like
gonna
he's
leave.
always.
He's
feel like
been there for like
he's
7
still
years.
there.
I
He
swear.
will never leave Kansas State. Kansas State is Skylar Thompson. They're a solid team for whenever OU gets into Big 12. They've given troubles in the past. Will they give troubles again? Maybe.
I'm going to go with a team in that same state and a team that we really
Kansas.
never talk about.
Everybody
'Cause
underestimates.
If you told me that on the first weekend of college football, at one point Kansas football would be first place in the Big 12, I'd be laughing. But guess what? They were in first place, pulling out a 17-14 win against South Dakota for their first win in 677 days.
Everybody
Their last win,
underestimates
October
team.
26, 2019 versus Texas Tech. So congrats to Kansas. I have to
Starting
give props
hot.
to Kansas, man.
Rock
Their
shot.
defense was the real superstars of this game, holding South Dakota to 263 total yards of offense with just 98 passing yards. So they had a huge 4th and out sequence to really silence South Dakota and win that game. And honestly, there won't be contenders in the Big 12. I hope they win more than one game, but you know what? I have to give them a shout out because honestly, this is probably the only time we will talk about them on this show.
I'm excited
So
for them.
I'm
excited
so
for
pumped.
them.
I'm so happy. After
Their
all the stuff
student
over the
section
summer,
was
after all the
just-
stuff
They
over the
stormed
summer
the
with Les
field.
Miles
Oh,
and
yeah.
all that stuff that happened, for that new coach to walk in here and get a win right off the bat is like a new breath of fresh air, I feel like, for Kansas football.
I don't know if it's going to make them bat over 500, but at least they got one of
Hey,
those.
they got one
Everybody-
win this year.
They got one.
Everybody underestimates teams from Kansas.
I know. I don't
It's
get
great
it.
to see
I don't think.
Kansas.
I don't
OU
think
should
there
be a
is-
little
I don't- I
worried.
think
I
you
mean,
should-
maybe just a little worried now.
Unfortunately, unable to hold it up against the Chanticleers.
I think we need to be worried, but
Hey, good for Kansas.
Yep.
Moving on, we've talked a little bit about Iowa State. They had a bit of a rocky showing against Northern Iowa. Should Iowa State be worried about their season?
absolutely not. If you're asking me, absolutely not. Iowa is also playing Iowa State for College Game Day, which is happening right now, which maybe I'll watch later because I recorded it. But I do not think that they should be worried at all. They always have a slow start to their season. In 2020, they had a slow start against Louisiana. They lost, actually, and then they barely beat TCU. They're returning almost their entire offense, so I'm not scared for them. Brock Purdy can actually play. What they need to do is let him launch the ball, throw it all the way down the field to Xavier Hutchinson and Breece Hall. They're both reliable players that we can count on 100% of the time. Release the beast. That's kind of my motto here. Release Brock Purdy, release the beast. He needs to be able to play and let him throw those big balls. You got those short balls to Charlie Kohler, but Charlie Kohler was injured. He didn't play, and they still, it was a tight race though. They still won, but I think once Charlie Kohler really steps on the field, Iowa State's going to be able to show out and actually contend and put their pedal to the metal. It's a game to learn from. Close games happen.
You're right.
Close games
happen.
happen.
Close games happen.
It's not a wrong
Saw it in Norman.
thing.
Close games happen. Saw it in Norman. I agree. Iowa State shouldn't be worried. It was just a weird week for everyone. It was just, college football decided to be a little weird last week.
It always is.
It always is,
always
but it was
is.
especially weird last week.
Yeah.
It was a nail-biter if you want to call it that. But despite the weird score, there was solid play from Iowa State. Shannon talked about Brock Purdy. He did solid. Brees Hall, also solid production.
He could do better, though.
He could do better,
Yeah.
but
Definitely
it
could do
wasn't
better.
bad. It's solid foundation for a good team. They still won. They didn't lose, which is the biggest.
Winning
that's the
isn't
thing.
pretty. Winning isn't pretty.
all the time. They shouldn't be worried at all. Iowa State will be fine.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you guys.
Okay.
I would worry if I was Iowa State fans. You only win by 6. You were tied 10 to 10 at half with an FCS team, and you're the 9th ranked team in the country. I would be a little worried if I was Iowa State
Did you
fans.
see how OU played?
I know. What I'm saying is there's room, obviously, to bounce back, but I would still be worried. Brock Purdy only threw for 199 yards. He didn't even hit 200 yards. Brees Hall was held. Brees Hall, one of the best running backs in college football, held to 69 total yards of rushing. Northern Iowa shouldn't be shutting down Brees Hall. So if I was Iowa State fans, I would be a little worried because that's just how that team should not be playing. You're about to play number ranked 10 Iowa in in-state matchup, and you're coming off of that. I would be
Northern
worried.
Iowa is also in state, so maybe they were just kind of
No.
nervous.
Yeah, maybe it's something about Iowa. I don't know. I don't know what goes on in Iowa. I don't know what goes on
So
up
you're
there.
then saying we should be worried about a Western Carolina? They're an FCS team as well. So
Yeah,
I mean,
but they're not from
They're
the
not.
state.
They're
I know, but
Oklahoma Baptist maybe, but not Western Carolina.
I don't see a reason, even if it's an in-state school, why you should be
So
worried
your
about
reasoning
them.
is that Brees Hall didn't produce?
The offense in general didn't produce. Matt Campbell, to me, was just an awful game for
Brock
Iowa
Purdy
State.
had key
I would be
players.
worried.
He had key players missing.
It was a weird week for everyone. College football was weird. Let's move on. We've talked about him before,
weird.
but Bijan Robinson, he's really become like the workhorse for this Texas offense, at least what we saw last week. Can he sustain this level of play in the Texas offense?
Absolutely. He's the focal point for this team. That's all they need him for. Sarkisian uses him as a dual threat. We saw him putting up receptions and carries, which is something that you don't see a lot from a player like him. He actually referred to him as quote unquote a Lamborghini, and he's not gonna quote unquote keep him in the garage. So Sarkisian is gonna let him rip it. Bijan Robinson is going to be the key player for Texas like he usually is. He bulldozes his way through the secondary. And honestly, Bijan Robinson is the present. Yes, we see Jordan Whittington and Hudson Card. They're great for Texas's future, but Bijan Robinson is for the present, and he's not even at his full potential yet. He's not even at his full potential. That was
Bijan's
the
the
first
guy.
game. That was the first game.
It was.
Played phenomenally.
These were all first games.
And we're gonna see him progress throughout the season.
Bijan's the guy. Bijan's the guy. The big thing that I'm going to harp on, talked to him in the preseason. He said he wants to emulate the level of play that Reggie Bush emulated. And in order to do that, he's got to keep producing in this offense. He's got to keep doing what he's doing.
He has no choice.
That is legendary talk to say.
Yeah.
Reggie Bush is a college football legend, and to say you're going to play like him, I want to see you back it up, Bijan. Let's see it. Let's see it this week.
I'm going to have to disagree with you guys again. So hear me out. Hear me out real quickly, all right? I think he'll be a top rusher in college football. I think he's going to be a top player in college football. But the level of play of getting 20 touches and always having these big-time games like he had last week, I think are going to just not happen. Teams are going to start game planning for this guy. He is the focal point of this offense. So what do? You game plan to stop the focal point of the offense.
Like Jordan
and
rules.
that's Bijan Robinson.
Like-
Exactly.
Like Jordan.
But
So
that's
I
when they're
just
going to
see-
utilize Jordan Whittington. They're going to utilize him, kind of play him as a decoy, and then use Bijan Robinson.
Good
Have him
defenses
come out
like
of nowhere.
OU in a speed D that can keep up with this guy, I think they will be able to contain him, especially with the interior defense we have and then the speed guys outside. I think good
Interior
defenses.
linemen, quote unquote, don't matter.
Oh,
But-
From my
very
sports
true.
analytics.
Yeah, from sports analytics, they
presentation.
technically don't. Yeah, but still, I think good defenses will be able to contain this guy,
Hey.
and I would love to see him not do that because I think he's a great player. But I guess we'll find out. Right?
I'm just interested to see how this all gas, no brakes
yeah.
All
team.
gas, no
All
brakes.
gas, no brakes. Let's
Okay,
see.
we'll
Steve.
we'll
Let's
see
see
against
what
an-
Steve
we'll
can
see
do
against
with it.
Arkansas.
Let's see
They're
what
playing
Sark
SEC
can
team
do.
I
today.
know, I know.
Exactly.
So we'll
It's
see what
gonna be a big
happens.
game.
All right, we got to wrap it up. Next up on Game DU, we're going to toss it to the studio team where they're going to talk about their heroes and zeros from last week.
Hello and welcome inside Studio A at Gaylord College here at OU. I'm your studio host, Tyler DeLuca, and before we hear some heroes and zeros, let's send it to Dylan Rivera for the top 5 plays from week 1.
Thanks, Tyler. We start out with some brotherly love. Rutgers and Temple. Senior speedster Bo Melton gets the ball off the quick curl route, makes the defender miss, and races into the end zone. Now, we all know little brothers want to be just like their big brothers. So DB Max Melton says, "Mama, it's my turn." Interception. And he'll take it to the house for the pick 6. The Melton boys and the rest of the Scarlet Knights would win big, 61-14. Notre Dame and Florida State. Jonathan Dorer with the game on the line has the luck of the Irish. He bangs in 3 big ones for Notre Dame as they thwart the Seminoles' comeback attempt. 41-38. UND heads back to South Bend with a Week 1 win. A couple of heavyweights, Georgia and Clemson. Defensive slugfest, and this one right here is quite the haymaker. Christopher Smith picks off Uiagalelei, and the Dogs run it back to the house. Touchdown, Georgia. Smith reads it, recognizes it, and jumps the route to get the INT. Georgia would go on to get the hard-fought victory, 10-3. UCLA and the Bayou Bengals of LSU. DTR rifles one across the middle to wide out Kyle Phillips, and he'll take the DBs dancing. Spinning out and tiptoeing the sideline and into the end zone. 6 more for the Bruins. Let's look at it again. Stutter step, spin move, breaks free, touchdown. The Bruins would put the Tigers to bed, 38-27. And our top play from week 1, Ole Miss and Louisville. Rebels go with the ground game and all aboard the Snoop Express. Boom! That's a bad man, ladies and gentlemen. Snoop Connor gets the handoff and brings the hammer down on Chandler Jones. Mississippi football would get the win over the Cardinals, 43-24. With that, I'll hand it back over to Tyler and the studio team.
Thanks, Dylan. Here in the studio today, I'm joined by Ashley Vandevelde, Blake Mullen, and Jimmy Wicks. How is everyone doing on this beautiful Saturday morning?
Great. Ready for some college football.
Oh, I love the energy. Well, we saw some amazing performances in a loaded opening week of college football. Ashley, who was your hero for week 1?
My hero for week 1 is Jack Cohn from Notre Dame. He made a historic statement last weekend at Florida State, throwing for 4 touchdown passes, which ties a 27-year-old program record for passes thrown in a Notre Dame debut. Touchdown passes, just to clarify. But he had insane accuracy, completing 26 of 35 passes for 366 yards. That's better than 74%. And those stats are also a career high for Cohn. He's great at reading defense, and he gets Notre Dame in the right place at the right time. And I think this first game provided a much-needed win for Notre Dame after, falling in the college football playoff to Alabama and losing that ACC championship to Clemson. And I think Cohn was also underappreciated at Wisconsin, and I think he's really going to thrive in South Bend.
Ashley, I love that pick. We didn't know what Notre Dame would look like after Ian Book, but my hero, Nakobe Dean and the Georgia front 7. Georgia lost 7 defensive backs. 7. They lost 4 to the NFL draft, 1 went pro, and then 2 transferred. We didn't know what to expect from them, but they came to play. Nakobe Dean, 5 tackles, 2 sacks. Constant pressure, 7 sacks in the game. DJ was flustered in the pocket the entire time. That's why the interception was thrown. He was so scared to be there. And let's talk about the Clemson running backs. Clemson, historically great running backs. Travis Etienne, right? They had 9 carries for 24 yards. The Georgia defense they came to play, that front 7 is the best in college football. They're dominant.
I really like your picks, but I love my pick. I'm going with Riley Moss. He had 2 huge interceptions against the University of Indiana and held Ty Fryfogle to only 5 touches the entire game, led an Iowa defense against a really tough Indiana pass offense led by Michael Penix and Ty Fryfogle. Moss also had 85 interception yards and accounted by 12 points by himself. And at one point, Moss almost had as much interception return yards as Penix had throwing yards. He looked really good, and the Iowa defense held Indiana to 233 yards of total offense. I think this is a huge statement for Iowa going into next week. I think they look really good, and I really look forward to what they can do against Iowa State this week.
Well, guys, if there were heroes, and those are some great heroes, that means, sadly, there were some zeros. So, Ashley, who do you have as your zero from week 1?
My zero for week 1, I'm sorry, Tyler over here in his Carolina blue, is Sam Howell. Now, it wasn't entirely Howell's fault. You know, the offensive line, he was sacked 6 times, so no help from the O-line there. But he only completed 17 of 32 passes for 208 yards and only had 1 touchdown. And on top of that, 3 interceptions. And the offense altogether only had 35 rushing yards. Now, from a quarterback of Howell's caliber, he should have been able to put up more than 10 points on a Virginia Tech team that allowed about 32 points last season per game. And on top of that, the Hokies had 58 fewer offensive yards than the Tar Heels, so they should have been able to get it done on that offense.
Listen, the Howell for Heisman campaign didn't start off exactly how we expected it,
right?
But it's okay. There's a lot of games to play, and they still might beat Clemson to win the ACC. You can quote me on that. They still might be there.
That's bold.
Listen,
now.
I'm bold.
Huge.
I'm bold. You see the Carolina blue. We're bold in this blue.
A little biased. Maybe a little.
But who is your zero?
My zero, it has to be Emory Jones, and I know they won, so I sound crazy, right? But he was 17 for 27 passing, 113 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, and here's the biggest stat: 4.2 yards per completion. 4.2. That's terrible. He didn't look good. The QB who came in and played great is freshman QB Alex Richardson with 160 rushing yards, 3 for 8 passing, not the most efficient, but he has to play better. Emory has to play better if Florida wants to succeed this year. Look at their upcoming schedule. They play Alabama next weekend. They go to Kentucky. They go to LSU. They play Georgia. And they host FSU. That is a very tough schedule. If they want to win big games, like Florida fans want them to do, Emory has to play better. It is that simple.
I agree. I think Emory showed a lot of flashes last year when he was playing, especially in the bowl game against OU. My zero has to be Dylan Morris. I'm sorry. How do you have a QBR of 8.5 against Montana? How? Washington became the 5th ranked team to lose to an FCS squad since 2007. Washington only ran for 3.8 yards per carry, which isn't necessarily Dylan Morris's fault, but still, that's pitiful against Montana. Side note, Dan Rowley wrote an article for Sports Illustrated saying that this rivalry between Washington and Montana should come to a quote-unquote merciful end. This game isn't played on paper. They play on the field. That's crazy. And another thing, Washington had more yards, double amount of first downs. They had time of possession. They lost because they had 3 picks by Dylan. It's plain and simple. They threw the game. They looked really bad.
That's why every game should be played, buddy.
Exactly.
That's why every game has to be played.
Exactly.
Well, guys, I love all your picks except maybe Sam Howell. But when Game Day U returns, we'll discuss if Desmond Ridder is a true Heisman contender. Stick around. Every game day to support their Sooners. This Sooner fan may have had to wait almost 32 years for his season tickets, but he finally gets to watch the Sooners perform live at the Palace. Katie Arata has more.
Football is more than just a game. For many, it brings feelings of nostalgia, happiness, and home. And that is definitely the case for former Navy Commander David Dameron. Commander Dameron served in the Navy for almost 32 years before his retirement earlier this year. He grew up an OU fan, but was unable to attend many games because of his commitment to the Navy. This is the first year he'll get to utilize his season tickets.
So I was able to catch a few games in between, but it definitely it helped me keep a connection here with home outside of my family.
While serving for the Navy, David enjoyed a couple of road games with his family. But last week, he finally got to experience his first home game in a very long time.
One thing that I'm really looking forward to, I have a nephew, he's 8, and he's never been to a game. And this boy is like no other. I mean, he can sprout off stats, scores, starters, names. I mean, I think he's going to have an awesome time.
And Commander Dameron plans on supporting the Sooners from right here on the Palace of the Prairie for the rest of the season. I'm Katie Arata, reporting for Game Day U.
Welcome back into the studio. It's the 4th segment of our show, and we have 4 questions ready to go. So if you guys are ready, it's time for 4th and 4. So the biggest matchup from the first week of the season had to be Georgia up against Clemson. In that game, we saw the Georgia defense completely shut down the Tigers. But was it a fluke, or are the Bulldogs a legit dominant force on the defensive side?
The Bulldogs are definitely a force on the defensive end of the ball. I think that this is one of the best defenses in college football, if not the best. They have several NFL prospects, and as Blake said earlier, I think they've got the best front seven in the country. And Clemson QB GDU OU suffered 7 sacks. That's the most allowed by Clemson under Dabo Swinney since he took over in 2008. Another record, Clemson scored their fewest points under Swinney, and Clemson was held to 2 yards rushing. That's unheard of. 2 yards. That's just ridiculous. And play calling by Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart just is insane. This defense is so dialed in, and they just look ready and prepared. They're insane. Great defense.
So I know I just said my hero was Nakobe Dean, so I might sound a little hypocritical, right? But I'm going to say a to be determined on the Georgia defense. They are no doubt top 15 in the country. There's no doubt about it. But top 5, top 1, maybe not. Like I said, they had 4 DBs get drafted into the NFL, including Eric Stokes, who was a stud. They had 1 or 2 transfer out, and then they also had another one go pro. So we need to see against a proven quarterback, and we are going to be able to see it. They go to Florida. I know. When they play them in Jacksonville, what Emory Jones will show up. But he is a more proven QB, I believe, than DJ. And they also play at Jordan-Hare Stadium, Bo Nix. 20 for 25 passing week 1, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns against Akron. Bo Nix looked phenomenal. I want to see what Georgia in the secondary does against Bo Nix. I want to see what they do against Emory Jones. That's what I want to see. And also on DJ. I feel like Clemson fans just set the bar too high. I mean, he is not Trevor Lawrence. He is not Deshaun Watson. He's DJ. He was the number 2 QB in the class, number 3 player, behind Bryce Young. Give him time. You look at their schedule, they don't play another ranked opponent. Give him time, he will be fine.
Man, I got to disagree with the DJ thing. When you say he needs to prove it against a real team, DJ Uiagalelei played really good against Notre Dame. Clemson's a good squad. I know it's week 1. I know it's the first time they've played. I understand that. But the D-line edge rushers looked really good, pushing the line back, making it difficult to get downhill. As you mentioned, they only had 2 rushing yards. The linebackers were flying around the ball, making plays in the backfield, constantly getting on the Clemson side of the ball. And the DBs did very well in press man coverage. I mean, the main change play was the interception. And yeah, I think DJ's really good. Last year he had a QBR of 88.4 out of 100. He's the same QB, threw for 430 yards against Notre Dame on a week's notice, and the very next week diced up Boston College for 342 yards and rushing for a touchdown. This Clemson team needs time to gel.
It's not the same Clemson team, though. They lost Travis Etienne, they lost 2 starting receivers, and they lost 2 starting O-linemen. They are not the same team. You look at how young they are and how many people who didn't play last year are now playing. It's not the same Clemson team. That's why I'm saying you have to give them time. It's not that DJ doesn't have it. I believe he does, like I just said. It's just look at what is around him. This is the worst Clemson supporting cast that we've had in years.
I don't agree that they don't need time to get back into it and stuff, but I think people want them to reload and go like Alabama does. And that's what people expect from a Clemson team that is continuously so good.
No, they've set the bar high every year. But we got to move on. So we saw several teams struggling over the past week, but which team out of all of them disappointed you the most, Ashley?
I was so disappointed by Indiana, ranked number 17, and they had a pretty good year last year, and they went in to play ranked Iowa and just really struggled. I expected more from them, and they lost to Iowa by such a large margin, 34-6, and they were supposed to be contending for a Big Ten championship this year. I mean, it could still happen, but not after playing like that. QB Michael Penix Jr. had 3 interceptions, and he just really struggled against the Hawkeyes defense, reading it, and there's only more of this defense to come in a conference like the Big Ten that is so defensively heavy. So Indiana was really, I thought it would be more of an even matchup, and it just really wasn't.
For my disappointment, I'm sorry, brother. You know who it is. You know who it is.
Deserved.
It has to be
deserved.
UNC. It has to be UNC. They returned 18 starters. They had the number 14 recruiting class. This was their year. In a year that I just talked about, Clemson was most vulnerable. They couldn't capitalize. Todd McShay has Sam Howell as his number 2 QB. They look terrible in the 10-17 loss. One thing, though, I will say, a little bit of hope. They still can win the ACC. They still can. One loss isn't going to kill them. They play Notre Dame on October 30th. Let's see what happens there. I think UNC actually wins that game, but they were a massive letdown in week 1.
Man, I like how you're going after Sam Howell. So mine, biggest letdown has to be the Wisconsin red zone. In 4 tries in the red zone, they went 0 for 4. Penn State got 1 first down in the entire first half, and they still won the game. That's inexcusable. Wisconsin also had the ball for 42 minutes, and for the most part controlled every second of the game. And Wisconsin, in a very, very important part of the game, choked a 1st and goal at the 1. Got no points out of it. Completely zilch, 0. I think Wisconsin seemingly lost their identity. They were supposed to be this well-coached, develop 3-star guys, execute, don't turn over the ball, win the turnover game, win up front. They seemingly look lost. I don't know what happened since last year, but they just seem completely out of it.
And this is a problem Wisconsin had last year too, and I think a lot of people were hoping they would come out of it, and they just really haven't. I think some of it has to be the coaching. Something's going on there, and it's just not.
Yeah, there's definitely something. All those teams came out flat, and we also saw some disappointing performances from preseason Heisman contenders. Rattler had some struggles. DJ and the Tigers couldn't find the end zone, and we've discussed enough of Sam Howell already. I'm tired of it. But one QB that got off to a hot start was Desmond Ridder of Cincinnati. So how real are Ridder's Heisman chances, and can he maintain this level of play throughout the entire season?
I definitely think he can maintain the level of play, especially because he's in a conference like the American. But I think that he's not a legit Heisman contender, because I think in this day and age, to win the Heisman, you have to be in a Power 5 with national attention. You can't compete with the top guys in big schools like, Alabama won it last year, or Bryce Young, or DJ Uiagalelei, quarterback-wise, from Alabama and Clemson. I think that their strength of schedule hurts too. They do play Indiana, which we just talked about how disappointing that was, but they do play a good Notre Dame team, hopefully, coming up, which will help. But, I think that Notre Dame will be definitely a test for them, and we'll have to see. But I don't think right now that you can be a legit Heisman contender in the American Athletic Conference.
See, so when I get your point there, but Lamar Jackson won it in 2016, Louisville. And you look at last year.
He's in the ACC.
We had, Louisville,
and they played Clemson.
Louisville. They did play Clemson, but he plays Notre Dame. He plays Notre Dame, though. Ridder plays Notre Dame. He also plays Indiana, another Big Ten school. I mean, he has a chance to be very good. Cincinnati has a chance this year to make the playoffs. They really do. And that is why Ridder can get Cincinnati there, and that is why Ridder can win the Heisman. You look at their schedule. I understand. It's not a lot of tough games. But that's stat padding, baby. There's going to be a ton of stats. And you also look at a team in Tulane, a team that played Oklahoma very close. What if Cincinnati goes out and 60 bombs them? That's going to look very good for Cincinnati and Ridder. So yes, I think Ridder is a legit Heisman candidate. I think he can win the Heisman. And I also think Cincinnati can be the first non-Power 5 conference team to make the playoffs because of that. Because they will have something that no other team has had, something that UCF didn't have. They're going to have a top 10 win against a very, very good Notre Dame team.
I don't know about that. I think Notre Dame could beat them, and I think it's easy to run up those stats when you're in an easier conference, and you have one tough game, Notre Dame. So
we will have to see.
I see where you guys are going with the whole schedule, but I truly believe he has the talent to do it. I really do. But the problem is, after Notre Dame, they play an abysmal schedule. They play nobodies for 2 months. I think he'll have a great resume, but with a lackluster back into the schedule, coupled with the fact that they're not really going to be on national television. I don't think anybody's going to be actually watching Cincinnati when they beat everybody by 50. Right. So when you have no ranked schedule, or no teams that are ranked on the schedule, I think it's going to be tough to bring eyes from not only from voters, but from the fans' perspective to say, man, Desmond Ridder looked really good this week. Against who? Against who? Do you know what I'm saying? I think that's one thing that's going to really hold him back, is the fact that no eyes are going to be on him when he's playing.
And you don't say Desmond Ridder, and some people go, who?
Yeah, who?
It's not like, oh, I know who that is.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of Heisman winners, just a couple years ago, LSU was on top of the football world. The Bayou Bengals were heralded as one of the best teams in all of college football history. But the Tigers have fallen pretty far. What do you guys feel like caused the fall from that Heisman level and now losing to UCLA?
Yeah, it's such a sad thing because I loved that 2019 national championship win. I'm a Louisiana girl, so I love seeing my Tigers do great. But they lost a lot of starters after that year. It's a big combination of things, but one of them was that 2019 championship team had a ton of experience, really stacked there, and it made for a really experienced championship squad. And they also lost key coaches. Dave Aranda, one of the best defensive coordinators, now the head coach at Baylor, he really made the defense at LSU so special. And passing game coordinator and receivers coach Joe Brady, who is really credited with making Joe Burrow, so great in a lot of his success. So that's two people that are gone. And I think that right now they need to work on the pass defense too. They've allowed 14 completions of 50 yards or more since the beginning of last season, which is a lot. And Coach Orgeron said that he wished he had prepared his guys better. And this is a sentiment he keeps expressing. So something's not going right at LSU. I think that right now they just need to keep reworking things.
Ashley, I couldn't agree more with what you said about coaching. They lost their DC and they lost Joe Brady. Two massive losses, right? But the recruits are always there. The recruits are great with LSU. So what's the issue? I'm going to just say it as it is. They're not an elite program. They're very good, but they are not Clemson. They are not Ohio State, and they are not Alabama. They're simply not. They have 2 seasons with 10-plus wins since 2014. Two. That's not elite. They are simply not that.
Yeah, I think that LSU year, I want to say it's a really like flash in a pan year where you had this perfect storm of talent. You mentioned the defensive coordinator and the passing game coordinator leaving. They had all of this stuff to come together at the exact same time at the right moment, and they capitalized on that moment. But the one thing that LSU does lack is consistency. They have these flash in the pan years like 2011 and then back in 2019, but they can't develop their recruits properly, I think. That's one thing that's really holding them back. They always have these top 10, 15 recruiting classes, but it just never seems to pan out. I think it is like part Ed Orgeron's fault and mostly just like the understaff, like everybody underneath. I don't know what exactly they're doing there, but it's just not right.
Yeah,
it's not right.
I agree with you. I think it's the development, but I do think LSU is an elite program. They've got the branding for it. I mean, it's the one school in the state of Louisiana, and it's a bigger program than Mississippi State and other SEC schools, so I definitely think it's an elite program.
I do too.
All right, well, that was some fantastic conversation on 4th and 4. And when Game Day U returns, we'll send it back out to the remote team to predict the final score of today's game between the Sooners and the Catamounts. Stick around.
Welcome back to Game Day U with kickoff growing slightly closer. I want to get into some final words for this matchup. Shannon, what are your final words?
My final word is consistent. I talked about it at the beginning of the show. What the Sooners need to do is come out consistent and sustain all 60 minutes of play. Consistency is definitely going to be a key in Lincoln Riley's play calling as well to see where he hands off those balls to not even the key players, but also for the depth for OU.
Yeah, my final words are tune-up. Western Carolina is not going to be a challenge. We've talked about this. It's going to be easy. It's going to be a great chance for the Sooners to address the flaws that they've had in their offense and their defense against a team that actually stacks up okay if you talk about an FCS team. So it'll be a great way to tune up and get ready for the rest of the season.
For me, the final word, get it together. Rough first game,
3 words.
3 words, final words. But get it together. I think the Sooner team came out really confident that first game. They got a slap to the face from Tulane, and I think this nice, like you said, tune-up game here against Western Carolina should be able to get them right back on the path, hopefully on another national championship run.
We're all on the same wavelength.
We're on the same wavelength.
Well, because we all know what they need to do. Yeah. They've got to tune up.
And it comes down to Mr. Riley.
It does indeed. It does indeed.
No conservative play, man.
No conservative play at all. All right, so we've talked a lot about the last game and who performed, who didn't perform. Let's get into some call-outs for this game. Who are you calling out, Shannon?
I'm calling out Gabe Burkich, my man. You played phenomenal against Tulane. Please, please, please keep it up. You played comfortable and confident, and you proved yourself, and you need to prove to everybody else this game that it wasn't a fluke, that it wasn't just something that happened that got lucky or anything. You played phenomenal. Jeez. You had 3 50-yarders that you made, excuse me, 3 50-yarders that you made, which does not happen often, so keep it up, buddy.
Yeah, bit of a positive call-out. I've got a little bit in the opposite. I'm calling out Eric Gray. Dude, you came from the SEC. You came from Tennessee. You didn't live up to the hype against Tulane. You didn't really do a whole lot at all. I mean, to be fair, nobody really did. But, 9 attempts with only 27 yards. Come on. You've got the potential. You've got the talent to really hit strong. You looked promising in the spring game. Back in the SEC, you ranked 6th in rushing. You had a team-high 6 touchdowns in one game, and that was only in 9 games with 5 starts in the 2020 season. You've got big promise coming to these Sooners, and you've got to live up to it.
against Western Carolina.
I was really excited for him last game, and I talked about him, and I talked about how good he was going to do, and he kind of lacked.
He kind of lacked a little bit. Now,
he did not.
I'd like to see him
He
get
got
more
put up
involved
the
in the
numbers.
passing game as
Exactly.
well.
I
I think they
agree.
were utilizing more as a rushing game, but Kennedy Brooks was the better guy that game, and I think
He
that's
was.
why you saw Lincoln
He was
Because
the
he's a
better guy.
veteran. He's used to that team play. He knows how to play.
It all comes back to conservative play calling. Got to get more
Absolutely.
interesting. The Catamounts are the team to test things out. If they don't work, it'll probably still work against them because,
It's Western Carolina.
It's Western Carolina. We know what it is. Ben, I think I have an idea of who your call-out's going to be.
Oh, yeah. I'll call him out second straight week, and I'll call him out every week if I can, honestly. And that is Spencer Rattler. Dude, come on. Second play of the game, and you throw a pick. Can't happen, all right? You got to be better. Let's get that consistency down. I want to see a solid performance out of him. I want him to do well. Genuinely. I genuinely want him to do well.
You want him to do well.
And he needs to just read the coverage, read what is being thrown at him, and just make the smart play. Make the easy play. Don't try to force things. Don't try to do too much, man. Just play your game. We know you're a great quarterback. Show us. Do it. Go be out there and be that guy.
Yeah, he's got the potential. He's got the potential
And
to be
he's got
great.
Caleb Williams right on his heels.
He does.
On his
I don't
back.
know. I don't know then why.
Lincoln Riley's
Why do you
gonna
come out
throw him
slow
in if he
then?
needs to.
That's the last
He's
guy.
going to throw him in if he needs to.
If he gets benched like he did against Texas, I don't know if he
I
gets
don't
that
know if
job
he'll come
back.
I
don't
think
know if he
will.
gets that job
I
back.
think
And
he will.
I think Caleb Williams will also perform once he gets that opportunity.
Better than
obviously,
Tanner Mordecai would.
capitalize.
Better than Tanner Mordecai would.
We'll have to look at it. We'll
Hey,
have to
hey, you didn't do that.
Hey, I love Tanner Mordecai, but
Hey,
you know.
Tanner Mordecai
Spring
at
game.
SMU, fantastic performance.
Yeah, good to see him.
Good to see
taking
him.
off. Yeah,
Good to see him. Good to see
him.
Calcaterra getting into a system, getting back
Miss
into
him.
football. Good to see
Miss him.
Mordecai in a system that
my gosh,
actually
it
fits with
feels
him.
forever ago.
It does. But Spencer,
Go Rattler.
he's got to tighten up. He's got to keep going. He has the potential. He's got the skills. He's got the receivers. He's got the running backs. He
He's
just
got all
needs
the weapons in the
to
world.
do it. He does. Eric, you got to help him out. We got to.
Hey, Burkage,
And
make those field
And
goals,
you know what?
buddy.
I'll come a
If
little
they have
slack
to
because Lincoln Riley's conservative play calling is also being effective.
It is.
I was saying that.
Rattler has such a big arm.
He
That
does.
man can throw the
Insane
ball.
arm.
Where
He can
where are
launch it.
those deep passes that Baker did, that
Well,
Kyler did?
the
when
deep
he had
passes went to
Hollywood and all those
interceptions.
guys? I know, that's what I'm saying. But where are those plays? They were able to create that space, that separation for the wide receivers. We're not seeing those plays
There was
anymore.
a better
They're all
O-line
check down
in previous
passes.
years. They had better O-line.
The
Kyler
O-line-
and
The
Baker.
O-line will
Bijan
always
knows what he's
perform
doing.
well,
They're
though.
still doing
This
fine.
O-line's
But what
always
Rattler needs to do is
I've got
trust his
trust in Bill
O-line.
Beaton.
He needs to trust
He
his
needs to
O-line.
trust himself.
He does.
And his capabilities. I think he's trying to do too much out there. And it's like, dude, settle down, play your game. Don't try
Exactly.
to do all this
I'm
other
with
stuff.
you.
Play
I'm
your
with you.
game.
We'll have to, hopefully he can settle down against the Catamounts. I mean, it's Western Carolina. We've said it a
I want
million
4
times.
touchdowns tonight.
4 touchdowns?
4 touchdowns, Rattler.
Speaking of touchdowns, speaking of scores, let's get into our final score predictions for this game. What is the score, Shannon?
I'm saying 5 touchdowns and a field goal from OU. I'm saying 38-14. OU's going to come out, and they're going to come out hot. I think they're going to actually put up points in the first half, unlike they did last game, pardon me. But I think they're going to be able to capitalize and really not get too cocky with themselves. I think they're going to play kind of even keel, both on offense and defense, and not run up too many points, but also let Western Carolina kind of sneak in there. I think they're going to put the pressure on and kind of press OU to hold up to their standard.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit of a different route, a little bit more score spread. I'm going 52-10 OU. We've said it a million times. It's Western Carolina. This is the perfect chance for the Sooners to recalculate, to figure out what's going on, to dial in on what exactly is going off with this offense and this defense. Strike what went right. Keep that second quarter defense from the Tulane game. Make that the entire game. They're still going to allow points because that always happens. There's not going to be a shutout. There's going to be some points because Western Carolina isn't that bad of a team if you look at them how
Then
they stack
why
up
are
in
you
the
predicting
FCS.
52-10?
Because they're not that great. They'll score
But
a little
you
bit.
just
They'll
said-
score a little bit when the third strings are in
I think
the
you're
fourth quarter.
contradicting yourself,
It happens.
Mr. Bossing.
I don't think
Well,
I am.
Hey, how about this? I'll back you up.
Okay.
I think my
All
final
right.
score.
Back you
I
up,
think my
Ben.
final score for the game is 55-14.
Oh my
There we
gosh.
go. There we go.
You guys are out of
time,
your mind.
Prime
This always
time,
happens.
under the lights, in the Palace, packed house, striping the
Sold
stadium.
out.
Those guys are going to come out firing. They're going to come out ready to go. I think they want to come out and dominate this game, and I think they will.
I think
we'll
they
see
come
the-
out.
we'll
I
see
think
the-
they
we'll
come
see
out
the
firing,
starters
but I
bench by
think
the
they
third
let off
quarter
the
today.
gas. I think they come out
100%.
firing, but I think they let off the gas in the third quarter.
Yeah,
Actually,
but all the
yeah,
starters-
100%. They're
reserves will
not
come
going to
in.
run the
That's
score up
when
to
the
reserves
15
13 comes
points.
in. That's when the
Yeah, they
14
will.
comes in.
We
I
put
don't know.
70 on South Dakota 2 years ago.
They did.
They could easily put up 55.
This is also Spencer
It's quite
Rattler,
possible.
remember?
Yeah, I know. But that's what I'm saying. I'm banking on him scoring a lot today.
Exactly.
We'll
And
see.
then Caleb
We'll
Williams
see
will come
how
in.
it goes.
Caleb Williams will come in the backup role, and guess what? Then he'll also put up points. So that's
You're
what
right.
I'm saying.
Ultimately,
all right.
we will have to see when they kick off at 6 p.m. against the Catamounts. But that's all we have here on our side. For Shannon Earhart, Ben Thomas, I'm Will Blessing. Let's kick it back to the studio team for their upset picks.
Welcome back into Studio A. It's our final segment of the show, so you know what that means. It's time for upset picks and pick'ems. So, which underdogs are going to cause some chaos this week, Ashley?
Okay, this might be a hot take, but I'm going with Arkansas over Texas. Now, I'm excited to see this matchup renewed in the new SEC, which is to come. Now, Arkansas did have issues last weekend against Rice, like on defense, which they're usually pretty good on, and some fumbled punts, but I think this is stuff that they can clean up, and they're going to clean up to play against Texas today. So I saw a lot of potential too. So I'm excited to see what Coach Sam Pittman continues to build in his second year with the Razorbacks. And this is a big road game for Steve Sarkisian. Like, this is his first big, road game in his new post. And I think that the home field advantage is also going to be really big for Arkansas.
Ashley, I love that pick. Being on the road, being a night game, those are the
Yes.
key things. Those are the very key things. I love that pick. I'm going to go with maybe the most shocking pick on the panel. Give me Colorado over Texas A&M. I know, I sound crazy, but freshman QB Haynes King was terrible last week. We forget that it was a 10-3 game against Kent State at halftime. 10-3. Haynes King, 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, did not look good. And Colorado was impressive on both sides of the ball against UNCO. They looked great. Sophomore running back Jarek Burchard, he was phenomenal. And QB Brendan Lewis, with his legs, he looked good too. He was very efficient, 10 for 15 passing. Colorado has what it takes. Colorado is going to win this game.
Oh my gosh, I love the hot take, and I really love the feeling of both of those picks. And I'm going to go with another hot take. I'm going to go with BYU over Utah. Utah is favored by 7 points, and for this BYU team, it really centers around 2 players. It centers on Keenan and Pili, who led BYU with 17 tackles in week 1 and held Arizona to 81 yards on the ground in a college football game. That's insane. And then Neil Pau'u is a mismatch on the outside. 6'4", great hands, really physical. Look for Kalani Sitake to game plan around him, to put him on an island against DBs and really create mismatches on the outside. I think they can really, really cause havoc for this Utah team.
Listen, those were some of those takes were they're almost
spicy.
piping hot.
A little spicy.
Piping hot. I'll even give it piping hot. So now back here in the Sooner State, who do you got, Ashley? Tulsa or Oklahoma State?
Well, we love seeing some Oklahoma football in our Oklahoma teams, but I've got Tulsa actually over our Big 12 rival. But I think, both teams squeaked by with wins last week. So I think that Oklahoma State barely beat Missouri State and Tulsa barely beat UC Davis. But I think that if Tulsa can play good defense and Oklahoma State hasn't looked great on offense, then I think they can get it done. I think Tulsa can get it done.
So I'm going to call it as it is. Neither of these teams looked good last week, so this is a very tough game to pick. I don't hate the Tulsa pick. I'm going to pick Oklahoma State. I think LD Brown will be too much to handle for Tulsa. But this game can truly go either way. This will be a game much closer than the experts think, if you will. It'll be a close game.
I agree with both of y'all. I think this is going to be a very close game. Neither team has looked very well. I believe Oklahoma State has the advantage in talent, coaching, experience, and home field advantage. I think Tulsa looked horrible against UC Davis. They held them to 2 yards a carry. That's insane. And Tulsa lost due to bad pass defense. And Davis Brin really, really needs to take care of the ball, not force into tight windows, make wide receivers make plays that they really shouldn't have to. Shane Illingsworth need to take control over this offense and give opportunities for the OSU wide receivers to make plays in space and really just have an opportunity to beat Tulsa. Yeah. Without that, I think they could struggle.
Yeah, I think just across the board, OSU is just frankly more talented. Like you said, they have the better coaching. I was disgusted with Tulsa that first week.
They could pull it together. Oklahoma State wasn't great last week.
That's a real quick turnaround. That's a real quick turnaround. Struggling from UC Davis to a Big 12.
Not played on paper, y'all.
It's not played on paper. That's a good point.
They got to play on the field.
They have to. Can't cancel it. Can't cancel the season.
Nope.
Okay. So now for a matchup from the most powerful alliance in all of college football, Oregon and Ohio State. Ashley, Who do you got?
I've got Ohio State on this one. I think it's at Ohio State, and that makes a huge difference for sure. And Ohio State struggled a bit at first against Minnesota, but once they got their feet under them, and quarterback C.J. Stroud was really good once he settled in. And I think that they can beat Oregon on defense, which is something Ohio State has struggled with. But I see them stepping up and getting the offense together, and I don't see Oregon's offense being able to keep up because they averaged 5 yards per play against Fresno State, and they trailed in the fourth quarter. So I think that Ohio State's got this one.
I agree with you. This game, I don't think this game's close, actually. I think C.J. Stroud comes out and puts on a show. You don't like that?
No, I don't.
You don't like that at all?
Well, finish your point.
Okay.
I'll go on mine.
With Thibodeau hurt, being questionable all week, this game, it's simply not going to be close. Being in Ohio State, C.J. Stroud, this is going to be the statement game. The statement game. I'm taking Ohio State by 17 plus.
Okay. I disagree with both of you. I think Stroud comes out to another slow start, similar to what he did in the Minnesota game.
Can he get up though? Like,
Not against Kayvon Thibodeau in company. I don't think so.
At home, I think he definitely can.
I agree.
I disagree. Ohio State, even on the defense side of the ball, they allowed 200 yards rushing and passing against Minnesota. Minnesota's not technically the most talented squad. I know Ibrahim had a tough game and had a lower body injury, and prayers up for that guy. But if Ryan Day doesn't make adjustments similar to what he did in the second half, they're in deep trouble. And I don't think they have the opportunity to wait until the second half against a team like Oregon. Oregon needs to focus their game plan on throws under 10 yards. So when C.J. Stroud was checking the ball down, he was 10 for 11. But when he had to make plays downfield and when he had to actually use his arm, he was 3 for 9. And he had to pick. Oregon needs to put pressure and send more than 5 guys. If the DBs can hold up against this Ohio State team, I think they have a really good chance to win. And get Kayvon Thibodeau in one-on-one matchups, similar to what you see Aaron Donald or J.J. Watt in the pro game. You have to just isolate him away from anybody and just get him one-on-one and be able to make pressure.
I think Ohio State's got more weapons.
Chris Olave looked really good. I agree with you.
They'll win out on this one. So.
I disagree with that part, but I think they got weapons.
But you can't question the Ohio State weapons. Like they're insane. Chris Olave he's nuts.
So knows though.
But there is nothing like a good in-state rivalry, and especially when it's between 2 top 10 teams. Iowa versus Iowa State. I know it's close for some.
Oh, yep.
It's close for some. Ashley, who do you got?
I have Iowa State. So Iowa State, I think, has really the total package. They've got solid defense and they've got great offense with Brock Purdy and Breece Hall. So I see, I think that they have the better offense than Iowa. And obviously Iowa was, they had that great defense last weekend against Indiana. But I think Iowa State, it's a big game on the big stage, and I think that they're going to be able to pull this out. And I don't think they'll have another close one like they did with UNI, Iowa State, like they did last week.
Iowa looked phenomenal last week against Indiana. I understand that. But we don't know how good Indiana is. They might be terrible. They look terrible, right? Once again, you're just not with me today. It's fine, though. It's fine. I'll keep going.
I don't know where you're getting this from.
You know what, though? Brock Purdy. I know he didn't look good last week. Actually, he looked quite bad. Breece Hall, same deal. But they will bounce back. It was week 1, guys. It's not like we're 7 weeks into the season.
I feel like Iowa State has these games, and they usually struggle against UNI. I don't know why.
Yes,
but so I think that they'll get it together.
It's week 1, though. We can't overhype week 1. I mean, we saw Rattler play bad. We saw Sam Howell play bad. Luckily, Rattler didn't lose. Luckily, Brock Purdy didn't lose, right? Unlike Sam Howell. But
relax. Hey, that was
hitting close to home.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
The subliminals.
It is not unheard of for a team to come out and struggle week 1, right? Being at home, Iowa State wins this game. Iowa State 10 plus.
Ooh.
Okay. I'm going to ask y'all 2 questions before I get into my points. Did you guys watch the Iowa State game playing Northern Iowa? Did you see them only beat them by 6? Did you see Breece Hall only have 69 rushing yards? Yeah. It's not a nice number.
Fluke game.
Did you guys see Iowa absolutely body Indiana? Did we all watch that on national television, right?
Talking about a running back who went over 1,500 yards last year. He'll be fine.
What I'm saying is, Iowa has a great defense and a top 5 offensive line led by Tyler Linderbaum, and Iowa's won every game since 2014. And you guys talking about like unheard of stuff. You know what's unheard of for Iowa State? Everybody on their roster has not beat Iowa. None of them. This is
the year then.
No, it's not.
This is their year.
No,
They've
it's
got
really
lots
not.
of hype.
It's not. They're not that good. I'm sorry. I was gonna run all over them. They're gonna control every facet of the game. Defensively, they're gonna completely shut them down. They're gonna make Brock Purdy look bad again. It happens every time. Iowa State looked horrible against Northern Iowa. Hall ran for only 69 yards, and Iowa's defense had 3 picks. One of them that didn't get allowed because of a penalty that was called back, and also they had a couple drop picks. Penix almost threw 5 picks against this Iowa defense, and Iowa also is one of the most interception turnover creating teams. I think they're going to absolutely just wreak havoc on Iowa State and make their life just terrible.
Okay, that got a little heated.
Yeah,
everyone, let's take a deep breath.
Oh my gosh.
Let's send it over to the West Coast for some late night football. USC or Stanford, Ashley?
Well, I have USC because Stanford, K-State last weekend, it was a little rough. Stanford did not score until the 4th quarter, and I think that USC, they've got good quarterback, solid running game right now, and I play Helton's gradually, getting this USC team, doing good, so I think I got USC on this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think USC wins this one big. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys watched Stanford play K-State last week. It was not a good game. It was quite frankly terrible, 24-7. I think Keaton Slovis, he comes out to play. He comes out and plays very good. Is this the year USC finally has a quarterback? I think so. I think USC is legit this year. I think USC can win the Pac-12 this year.
All right, somebody's got to do it. Hottest take of the show. Picking Stanford over USC. Oh. Somebody had to do it. So
Are you serious?
I know they looked bad against Kansas State. I think they're gonna have a bounce back week. It's only week 1. I don't think we should overanalyze this Stanford team. USC struggled to make big runs and consistently make gains on the ground. I think up front they're a little soft, and I think Stanford could take advantage of that. And Stanford has to keep USC behind the sticks. They have to force them into 3rd and long situations, make them actually have to make plays. Stanford also has to have control of time of possession. They need to win the turnover battle. They need everything to go their way to win this game. I'm not going to lie. But I think Stanford has the capability to do it.
That is the biggest upset of the show.
Oh, it has to be.
If it happens,
Not close.
If it happens, he's going to be coming at us all night, guys. So let's hope on that one.
Okay, well now back home in Norman, after a pretty disappointing week 1 against Tulane, the Oklahoma Sooners will face the Catamounts of Western Carolina. Will OU get the win, or will they get another scare like last week, Ashley?
See, the thing about OU is that they can't seem to finish games. We've had that issue in the past, and it's back seems like to haunt us. And, we come out and then we drift off. So I think that this will be a good, confidence game for us, and that we'll be able to go out and win big.
Yeah, like you mentioned, second half has been killer. I don't think this game will be within 30 points, though, at second half. Spencer Rattler's going to come out to play. The run game will be there. Kennedy Brooks, where are you? We need you tonight. We need you to have a big game tonight. I know you sat out last year because of COVID. We need a big game tonight. But I think OU, this is simply just too good. There's 2 completely different levels of teams on the field tonight. OU wins this one big. I'm going to take OU by 50+, actually.
50+?
50+.
I love it.
Man.
I love that pick.
I love it.
I think you guys are right. I think just OU has to keep it simple. You guys are better on every facet of the ball. Special teams, offense, doesn't matter. They're the more talented team. So they just need to keep it simple. Just run your offense. Run the ball 60% of the time. Just run all over them. Bully them. You're better at every position. You have better coaching. It's just keep it simple and just run the ball. Push the pedal to the metal. Just don't let off like you did the Tulane game. I don't think that will happen again this week. I think they're way too talented. They're going to overwhelm them, and I don't think this game's going to be close. And honestly, I would be shocked if WCU even gets in the red zone this week. I'd be astonished if that happens. I think they're going to absolutely dominate them.
Yeah, I think that's all fair to say. And how about having a full attendance at the Palace?
Mm-hmm.
Once again,
yes,
I know I am
so
pumped.
Oh,
that student section is going to be jumping and everything.
Yes.
I know I'm super excited for that. And then Big 12 expansion news as well. It's
yes.
Everything is on the up and up on the news for college football, and we're going to have it all here on Game Day U, and it's going to be very, very excited. But thank you so much for watching Game Day U here in Gaylord Hall at the University of Oklahoma. We'll be back next week with coverage of OU versus Nebraska. For Ashley Vandevelde, Blake Mullen, and Jimmy Wicks, I'm Tyler DeLuca. Please be sure to keep up with Game Day U on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a fun and safe game day.